So we are reading Ephesians 5. It says here, it was read in your hearing, therefore be imitators of God as dear children, and walk in love as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice. In short, it says, and we're going to be reflecting on that, be imitators of God because you are his children. So the best you can do, like a child, imitate your father. Imitate God. How do you do that? By walking in love. Not only do you, if you know that is what Christ has done. He died for us. He loved us and gave himself for us as a sacrifice. Imitate that. Imitate that love, that self-giving love, that self-sacrificing love. Imitate it. When you do that, you are imitating God. Amen. May God bless us as we go through this lesson. We want to know, and sometimes we struggle with this, but this text is giving us an answer. That what is indeed the end of life? Where is life headed? What's the ultimate of human existence? When all is said and done, where are we headed? In the Bible, we know what's going to happen, but outside of the Bible, to those who don't believe, those who believe in evolution would like us to know or to believe that we have behind us a subhuman existence, and ahead of us, probably a glorious human existence. I don't know. But it looks like, based on the theory, or at least some part of it, that things were bad in the past, but now they are better. Now, some theories would argue that we are actually sandwiched between two big bangs. Well, they don't put it like that, but this is how I read it. We're sandwiched between two big bangs. The first bang brought life, and the second bang will end life. So it's boom, there was life, boom, life is gone. So in other words, we were started by coincidence, we will end by accident. So nobody knew why you were here, you just came and said, oh, he's here. And then before you realize, oops, he's gone. So we don't know where all this will end. What is then the goal of what is the ideal, the goal of human existence? Where are we headed? Now, we must confess, beloved, that science has made some serious inroads, made some serious progress. Technology has made things better. Now we can even communicate to people who are in Cape Town, Berlin, Uganda, and that's technology. We've been to the moon. We're trying to get to Mars and other places. We studied so much. We know so much about nature than Abraham and many others that lived in the past. Science has indeed extended our knowledge. It has made us to appear as if we are wise. It has advanced in many ways, the mortality rate, the disease control, understanding of nature. It has been amazing. We live in a very, very scientific world that indeed has made things very, very comfortable. But let's also agree that at a relational level, science hasn't helped us that much. I mean, between human beings, there's no technology that makes you understand your child. It's still the old-fashioned way. Listen. There's no other thing. Listen, use your ears. There's no gadget to be able to understand your spouse. But on the level of ethics, on the level of our behavior, science has not been very helpful. Would you agree? There have been more wars since the advent of science and technology than we have ever had in our history. It looks like science has managed to come up with weapons. Actually, I'm told that there are weapons that can kill you 10 times. Like you will have to be resurrected 10 times before you actually live. How powerful those weapons are. They kill you, finish. You become dust, and then they kill the dust. That dust becomes, they just finish you off. But there's no weapon to create peace. There's no weapon to make nations to love each other. There's no weapons to make sure that there's love in our homes. We've been to the moon. I attended a graduation service. I was supposed to pray. I felt like preaching. I was supposed to only pray. I was told that just pray only. I wanted to preach. But once you stand behind the pulpit, they can't stop you. So just before I pray, I thought I should just make the following comment. They're not going to do anything. But that's the last time they invite you. So the young man who was speaking in the graduation, I think is the representative of the students, say that we thank science. It was a technological school. We thank science because now we are able to send men to the moon. But religion, we don't know what it has done for us. I was saying, religion has kept you at your home. Religion has made you to stay at home. Science takes you to the moon. Religion keeps you at home. Because science can take you to the moon, but it can't help you stay at home. It can't help you relate to your wife. It can't help you ask for forgiveness. It's religion that does that. So as much as we appreciate science, but we know that it has also come with all kinds of challenges. Now we face and confronted with the issues of individualism, things that we never knew in Africa, materialism. And we grew up in Africa where if you have something, you feel bad for not sharing it. Materialism, enhanced by greed and corruption and erosion of social cohesion. These evils of our times make our past look very glorious. Good old days when we could walk and not be afraid, when we could walk and not be raped. Those were good old days before the advent of technology and science. So the so-called progress, it looks okay. I'm old, man. You must keep reminding me. I've been using that thing now. Now I must use this one. Lord have mercy. You must pray for me. All right. These guys are saying, don't bring these old people here again. All right. It looks like the so-called progress that we talk about, being able to fly here and there within no time, will, if nothing happens, end in the extinction of life in general, if nothing does not happen very soon. So we appreciate science, but we know that science does not actually influence ethics. Maybe it does in a way, but it hasn't been very clear so far. And then our text comes in the midst of that confusion. It says, be imitators of God as dear children and walk in love. So the text is not just saying, I know some versions say be followers of God, like follow God, which is beautiful, by the way, to follow God. But there's a nuance here that comes as you look at the original meaning there. It doesn't talk about disciples as mathetes. It doesn't talk about disciples. It talks about mimetes, mimic, imitate, be like God. So we can argue then, just on the surface, we can argue on that text that therefore the goal of human existence, where we are going, the trajectory points us to higher heights, high and lofty standards, to be like God. Now we're created in the image of God. We fell and God has saved us. God has sent his son to die for us so that we can begin a trajectory that goes to a point where it can be said they really do resemble God. But of course, the resemblance of God is not the resemblance in his nature. It is not ontological, it is ethical. It is not the resemblance in being. In other words, it doesn't say be as God. It says be like God, be godlike, be godly. Education, those of you will remember, there's a nice quotation there. It says, higher than the highest human thought can reach is God's ideal for his children. Godliness and godlikeness. That's the goal. To be like God. Not to be like Americans. Some of us want to be like Americans. Want to be like an American, want to dress like an American, want to walk like a... No. It's bigger than that. We have to walk and be like God. In other words, in our behavior, in the things we do, in our action, we need to be able to say, would God do this? If the answer is no, you don't do it. Now, I often say to my boys, don't do what daddy would not do. I'm trying to say imitate daddy, but that's dangerous. But I say, don't do what daddy would not do. So when you find yourself in a fix, ask yourself, would daddy do this? Now, there's a saying in my language, when you are about to discipline your child, you ask him a question, and in my language, it sounds better. I'll try and throw it into English. When you're about to discipline your child, you say to your child, listen here, who have you ever seen in this family doing what you have just done? Now you're going to discipline. Because we have just done something we have never seen here in this family. And then to bring it even more closer, have you ever seen me do that? And the child is like, so why did you do it? So in other words, we are saying, you are supposed to imitate me. You are supposed to be like me. What are you doing? Are you my child? You can even doubt and say, I wonder if this is my child. Because I'm just looking at the behavior. I've never seen this thing yet. Then you have to look at your wife and say, honey, are you good? But you wonder if... What would God do? What would my father do? If that regulates our life, if that supports the way we do things, at least we have a standard. Standard is huge. Of course, I will later argue to those who say, you see, I told you that you are not free. Now you have to be imitating your God, everywhere imitating your God. But everybody is an imitator. It just depends who you are imitating. If it's not God, it's the devil. Because we read in Ephesians 2, you remember in Ephesians 2, when it says that he has made you alive, who were dead in trespasses and sins, you remember? In which you once walked. Now here he says we must walk in love. But before, we were walking in what? According to the course of this world. We were walking according to the prince of the power of the air. In other words, we were imitating the devil. You may think you are free. People have been smoking dagga. You are not the first one. You are not original. People have been committing adultery. There's nothing original. People have been lying. There's nothing original. So you think you are clever. You're doing things that people have always been doing. You're imitating the devil. So that's one option. That is, as darkness, you see, human beings are not necessary beings. We just don't live without a context. We are not on our own, just do things on our own. No. There are influences. The issue is not whether you are a slave or not. The issue is who is your master. Not whether you are a slave or not. There's no one who's so free that he is not influenced by anyone. He is not imitating, and it doesn't work like that. So the choice is, who will you imitate? Now you may think you are the cleverest. You think so hard. The devil also does that. You can't outthink him. He's been thinking before you were born. He continues to think now, even when you are asleep. So, we don't walk according to the course of this world. We are not enrolled in the university of darkness. We are enrolled in the university of light, where God is. So we walk as God walks. So when you don't walk like God, the word is you have misrepresented God. And sometimes our children get very confused when they hear that this is what God does, and they see the mother doing this. They say, but now what's happening now? Who's right now here? God says this, my mother says this. God says this, but my father is doing this. Who is doing? They get very confused, especially at an early age. Then there's a discrepancy. There's a credibility gap. Then they are confused because they hear this in church, but then they see this thing being done. Do you know what happens when a church starts fighting like we do in our churches? And there are young people who want to know whether this is the right place to be. And they see adults they found in church fighting. Then they say, I think we need to go and come back when there's peace here. And we don't know how dangerous that thing is. I've been in churches where there's a lot of fights. I've seen young people live in church during the crisis and they never come back. The adults will come back later when all is said and done, when their politics are done, they'll come. But their kids will never come back because they are confused. They say, we came here and we've been listening to you preach. Now you do this thing in church. And they say, we are confused. Maybe that's what God does. Because they are also, young people are always debating with themselves, is this the right path? Is this the right thing? That is why a Christian home has a very powerful influence in the upbringing of your children. Because they are trying to figure out, should I follow them or should I not? Should I listen to my friends or not? There's a lot of battle and contestation that is taking place in the mind. And the moment you don't live what you preach, you are in trouble. That is why home is the best place to chisel a good character. Because you can't pretend at home. It's very difficult because you are always at home. You can pretend in church. At home, you are who you are. If we want to know you, we must see you at home. So which means home is the best place to develop character. Here, we're all nice. Even the cruel ones are nice. Hi, Pastor. We are blessed by your sermon. Now, in my mind, I think, wow, she's the most wonderful person in Lavington. Now, until somebody says, you don't know her. But all I'm trying to say here is, in those close environment, then you can begin to see who we are. And that's where we have the greatest impact. When your children can stand up and say, my father is a Christian. Because they were there yesterday when you were quarreling with your wife, and they saw and they heard that this man is a Christian. Not that he never gets angry, but even when he gets angry, he never uses abusive language. I always say to couples, there are two views here. One says you must never be angry in front of your children. Don't fight in front of your children. Whenever you fight, go to the bedroom and shut the door. That's one view. The danger with that is that your kids grow up saying, I never saw my father quarrel with my mother. So they think quarreling in marriage is dangerous. So the day they marry and they start quarreling and say, I've never seen this thing at home, they can't deal with it. They can't. They say, there's something abnormal about us. How can we quarrel? Daddy never quarreled with my mother. Never. Because you were lying, you were hiding it. Now I say, we need to teach you how to quarrel so you can quarrel in front of your children. Because they are watching as you are quarreling. Because you are giving them the skill that the mother speaks first and you listen. You don't interject, you listen. And you say, okay, honey, are you done? And then you answer. You see, and they are listening. And before they realize, those communication skills start to develop in them. They become part of their upbringing. And they just see themselves listening when somebody speaks because it's part of their upbringing. Those are skills that can be learned. And more than learned, of course, those are skills that can be caught. By the way, we are going to devote 1 hour tomorrow on family, grace-oriented families. Just have to talk about families tomorrow. And those of us who don't have family, you can't not have a family. That's why you are here. And it will be a blessing indeed. So we are all imitators, but the challenge is for us to imitate God. That's why the goal is not to be God. The goal is to be God-like. The goal is to be godly. The goal is to walk in love. The goal is to imitate God's love, the way we act, the way we behave. The goal of human existence has to do with a developed character. The goal is to have a well-developed, symmetrical character. Yes, ethical, that's the goal. But science may have the goal of having the smartest car and the smartest cell phone or this or that, or going to the Mars or harnessing nature. But the goal of Christianity, the goal that we have here is self-control, not controlling nature, controlling yourself. The ability to reflect God's character. You know, when Lucifer fell because he wanted to be like. In other words, he wanted to be as. Not like in terms of character. Lucifer was not looking at the character of God. If you read Isaiah 14, he says, I will ascend into heaven. It has nothing to do with character. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. It has nothing to do with character. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. It had nothing to do with character. It was just power and authority. He was saying, I will bow to no one. But our development, our goal, our progression is more on the ethical side. That I will show kindness as I see God show kindness. I will show love as I've seen Christ show love. I will forgive as I've been forgiven. That's the whole ultimate. It is developmental. But remember, we've said it again and we continue saying it. We are not saved by growing. We are not saved by making progress. We make that progress because we are saved. So when Satan tempts man in the Garden of Eden, his entry point was that they too would be as gods. That's what he said. What he wanted, he projected to them. You will be as gods, knowing good and evil. You will be as gods. In other words, when you are as gods, you don't listen to anyone. You obey no one. You break every law because you are God yourself. You'll be equal with God, needing no law. That's what he said. And what do we see? The moment they ate of the fruit, the moment they fell into sin, we didn't see them becoming God. We saw them becoming like fools because now they were trying to cover themselves with apron, with fig leaves. And when God asked what has happened, Adam says, it's this woman. You know, they have a problem with God. They're running away from God, and then they're running away from each other. That's what happens when sin enters. It affects the relationship. And so God's idea then is to turn that thing so that we come closer. So Adam blames God for Eve. Eve blames God for the snake. And what does Cain do? Cain, who was supposed to be his brother's keeper, becomes his brother's killer because he would refuse to walk in love. So right there at the beginning, you see what happens to relationship. You see what happens when sin enters. They may still be bright. I mean, Cain could still bring the best fruit. He knew how to make sure that the fruit the trees yield as much fruit as possible. He was an expert farmer, but he could not control, he could not master sin. That's the problem. He couldn't. His character was flawed. He killed his own brother. We must imitate God and walk in love. We've been created, God created man in his own image. Of course, at times we try to create him in our image. But it's just one way. It's God in our image, God in his image, not us in God's image. We are created in God's image. And let's not create God in our image. Now, what does created in God's image mean? Because that is the ability, that's the capacity to be like God in terms of character. That very thing. Because remember, dogs do not develop character. Animals may be nice, but they don't develop character. You never see an animal in court say what you did was wrong. When a dog bites you, that's it. That's what dogs do. You can't say, naughty dog. Didn't you see they were saved by grace? Dogs have nothing to do with grace. But those who are created in the image of God, you hold them to account. You say, but you know we are not supposed to do that. You know you should have chosen differently. So the moment we say, imitate God, the moment you say, there is a character to develop, you can never develop a character without a power of choice. You must be able to choose. Because character, the building block of character is, first of all, the ability to choose. So we read that human beings created in the image of God, what it means is that they are endowed with a power akin to that of the Creator. Education, page 17. They are endowed with power akin to that of the Creator. Individuality. Power to think and to do. That enables you to develop character. That you are an individual, separate, distinct, that you can praise God in the gifts that God has given you. That you have the power to reason, the power to think and to do. Now, which means, because you are created in the image of God, we can never be sure what you are going to do next. Because you can always surprise us, because of the ability to think. You know, people who are oppressors, people who are dictators, they don't want citizen that thinks. Because that thinks is not. So when you start thinking, then you may surprise me. So they say, don't think, just do. So you are trained to just do. You are trained to just do. Now that actually goes against your being created in the image of God. I've seen it also with leaders as presidents. We have people, we have your colleagues. You want to make sure you surround yourselves with stooges who can't think. Always say yes. Yes, President. Yes, President. I was about to say that, President. You actually took my words out of my mouth, President. You surround yourself with stooges. You surround yourself with people who cannot think. You want them. You want predictability. No, sir. When people are created in the image of God, even in marriage, when people are created in the image of God, they can surprise you. I remember one day I bought a shoe for my wife. I thought it was the best shoe. Then I said, honey, ta-da. He says, wow. So you bought this shoe for your mother or something like that. I don't think that was romantic. But there's nothing wrong with my mother. But I mean, honestly, there's something, your mother. Now, it shows that I've got an individual here who may have different taste. There are people who struggle with that. Even they order. They say, honey, try this one. And honey says, no, I don't want that one. I want this one. He said, please, eat this one. He says, no. I mean, I've seen that. No, I don't want that one. And then he says, waiter, don't worry. Just bring that one for her. And then it's is it? All right, let me stand here. He says, how is it? I said, what are you going to say? You are forced to eat. Hey, when you marry a person who has individuality, you're marrying a person who thinks he can say no. You go there alone. That's something you need to encourage and develop while you are a boy and a girl. Don't just jump whenever you get a call. Hey, let's go to the mall. Even if you have nothing to do, pretend as if you have something to do. And say, let me think, let me look at my diary. And then says, I think I can cancel that one. I'll cancel that one. Okay, fine. Let's meet in an hour. Even though you want to meet him now, but you say, let's meet in an hour. It's just to create a space that I'm created in the image of God. I'm not a robot. You don't just... And when you do that, people learn to respect you. They do. So ours is to then perfect a character after divine similitude, after the likeness of God. But what do we mean when we talk about love? Because this love looks like it's the reflection of God's character. That love is seen in the way Christ died for us and sacrificed for us. It is this love that compelled Christ to give himself for us, to offer himself for us as a sacrifice. We are therefore to mimic that love. We are therefore supposed to imitate that love. It's amazing when we read from evolution that it is powered by survival of the fittest. In Christianity, it is love from the strongest that protects the weakest. So it's not survival of the fittest. It's those who are the fittest must protect those who are weak. And even die for them. Sacrifice. Make sure that the weak can survive. That's what Christ did. He was God, but he was willing to lay off his divinity and be like us, while, of course, keeping his divinity politically correct, otherwise I'm going to be in trouble. But he was able to come to our level and make sure that we are able to get to his level. It was not survival of the fittest. So love seems to be anti-evolutionary. So you see John 3:16, for God so loved the world. Then you see 1 John 3:16, he says, this is how we know what love is, because Christ has died for us. You must therefore die for your brethren. That's what 1 John 3:16 says. It says, based on John 3:16, you must mimic that in the way you relate to each other. Imitate that in the way you relate to each other. Now, this is the only hope for humanity. This love is the only hope for humanity. Without love, there will be no real development. All that we do, if it is done for selfish interest, then it will end in nothing. No community can thrive that is propelled by selfish ambitions. So what do we mean then when we talk about love? We mean, now sometimes when we think about love, we think love is this feminine emotion, weak thing that has no logic, that is not rational. Just a big cloud of feeling. You don't even know why, but you know it's there. You don't even know where it comes from. You don't know where it will end, but it's hot, it's nice, you enjoy it while it lasts. You don't know. You can't even define it. If I say, why do you laugh? You say, Pastor, I don't know. I just laugh. Then you know that you are confused. You are in love with your feelings, not in love with the person. Now, but when we talk about love, people get scared. Let me tell you, Africans are afraid of love. Now, some nations are very romantic, and I don't want to be like them, but Africans are very afraid of love. Do you know that it takes strength for an African man to say to his child, especially if he's a boy, come here, boy, Daddy loves you. Hey, it's difficult, man. Hey. How many of you have heard your father say to you, I love you, boy? I mean, give me your hand. There should be some. But it's not many. Let me just show your hand. My father never said that he's dead. He never, but I knew he loves me. No. Two girls, they say, now don't worry. Two girls, they say, oh come here, my darling. Come here. This one, go and play outside. My father buys me a bicycle. I knew it's my bicycle. I knew it's mine. I mean, I could look at the size. So he puts it there. So I look at this bicycle, first day, second day, third day. He says nothing. Because he's afraid to be vulnerable. And say, I bought you something like... So I'm sure he's trying to think, how am I going to approach this boy and tell him I bought... He will think I love him. So he keeps looking at me. Until I said, Daddy, whose bike is this? Hey, don't touch that bicycle. Don't touch it. I know you are naughty. Don't touch that bicycle. But I knew that's mine. He never said it's mine, but I rode it every day. He never said it's mine. He doesn't want to know that he loves me, because I'm going to make him weak, and I'm also going to be weak. So he must always pretend as if you're strong, because if you let love shine through, you're going to be weak. So, hey, come on, get outside. But you feel like, our boys need us to hug them. Just bring us, bah, come, let daddy hug you. Bah, I hug them. I always longed for that hug from my father. I never got it, but I give it to my boys. Give your boys a hug. It means so much to them. Do you know how many boys commit suicide as opposed to girls? Because they don't feel loved. They don't feel appreciated. Give them a hug. It protects them from all the diseases. It boosts their immune system. It's amazing. And the Bible says in Luke 10:27, thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy and with all thy soul and with all thy strength. You know what is happening here? Love is not just heart. Love is not just soul. Love is also mind. Love is also strength. With every facet, with every faculty of your being, you love God. In other words, when you love God, that becomes the basis of development. Every faculty is challenged to improve when you love God. I can go on and on. I know we're running out of time. It has been said, and it is very true, that when we love the infinite, when you love the omniscient one, can you just throw this slide here? I have to throw this one. To love him, the infinite, the omniscient one, with the whole strength and mind and heart, means the highest development of every power. It means that in the whole being, the body, the mind, as well as the soul, the image of God is restored. Do you know that it was the love of God that started science? Because when you see God as a God who loves, as a God who reasons, as a God who thinks, you begin to study his creation, and it develops in you the appetite to think. I'm going to quote for you. Now give me a quotation there. I'm going to quote for you a quotation from an atheist, from an evolutionary biologist by the name of Lauren Isley. She wrote this in one. Listen to what she says. He said, the philosophy of experimental science began not the knowledge that it was dealing with a rational universe controlled by a creator who did not act upon whim nor interfere with the forces he had set in operation. It is surely one of the curious paradoxes of history that science, which professionally has little to do with faith, owes its origins to an act of faith that the universe can be rationally interpreted, and that science today is sustained by that assumption. The moment you fall in love with God, the moment you begin to love God and believe and to know that He created the universe, immediately you develop an appetite to study the universe. That's why you had Isaac Newton. That's why you had Galileo. That's why you have all these big scientists who were Christians, because it was this love for God that made them to be curious and want to know the universe. When you love God, it develops your mind. Love increases your mind. I know this elasticity of the mind, there's a lot that's being said about that. But let me put this one. When you love, your mind develops. When you hate, it shrinks. I wish I could give a quotation, but I think that's true. So, but not only do we love God, but then he says, then you love your neighbor as yourself. Here's another correction. The law of love calls for the devotion of body, mind, and soul to the service of God and our fellow men. And this service, while making us a blessing to others, it brings the greatest blessing to ourselves. Unselfishness underlies all true development. Through unselfish service, we receive the highest culture of every faculty. More and more fully do we become partakers of the divine nature. We are fitted for heaven, for we receive heaven in our hearts. When we love our fellow men, beloved, this leads to the highest culture. It leads us to want to study, to want to know more as to how we can improve our service. A nation that is corrupt, that looks at how much a person can get, can never develop. Because inventors, people who are on the cutting edge of scientific development, are not the rich ones. People who are corrupt don't invest anything. They don't develop anything. They develop their stomachs. You can always see by how they look that this guy is actually developing himself physically. He's not helping anyone. But once Do you know it is a fact that there is enough in the world to feed everyone? If only we were to share, no one will go to bed on a hungry stomach. No one. Why are we not doing that? Because there are some people who have so much. So much. In South Africa, they took money in this Estina dairy farm, that thing at millions. The last time they checked in that account, there was 16 rand. 16. You know, when these guys take money, they even take money and borrow from the bank. Like there's no money in the account. They borrow, they have an overdraft for corruption. They finish everything now, they go for overdraft. They go borrow from the bank. And you ask yourself, what do you do with the money? You never see it. These are the guys who get 20 billion to build a street. You go there, there's no street, but they are still asking for more money. It's the same also in church leadership. If we can learn to love one another, we can avoid many fights and many wars. If we can learn to love one another. If we can just imitate God, there will be no tribalism and xenophobia that we see in South Africa. You can't just love those who speak your language because they are in trouble. You know what happens when you love those who speak your language? Then you are fine because you love them in the presence of others. But when others are not there, you won't love them. This is the fact of life. If you love me because I speak your language, you would show that love when there are others who don't speak your language. But when everyone else is gone, we are the only ones in the village, there will be no love. Tribalism is dangerous. It doesn't love anyone. Don't love me because I'm tall. Don't love me because I speak your language. Love me because I'm created in the image of God. Love me because I'm God's creation. I've been created by God. So, what's the alternative? Now, what do we have if we don't want to imitate God and love our fellow men? What do we have? You have the verses there. I'm not going to read them. In chapter 5, it says there, fornication. That's how it happens when we don't love. Uncleanliness, covetousness, all those evil things happen when we fail to imitate God. Wars, rumors of wars, malice, and all kinds of things. How do you love God? John keeps asking the question when you hate the person seated next to you. Worship is not only confined to what we do on Sabbath, but what we do on Sabbath empowers us to live lives that are pleasing to God, to reflect that character. I want to reflect that character in my home. Then Matthew 5:44, verse 47, it says, be perfect just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Imitate your Father by doing what? It's amazing. Matthew 5 has all kinds of things that we have heard. But there's only one that says, when you do this, we are just like your Father. We are perfect as your Father is perfect. What is that? Love your enemies. When you do that, people get surprised because no one is able to do that without God. Those who love their enemies are actually imitating God. That's why it says when they see you do these things, they will glorify God because there is no one who can do that. We have a standard. Any deviation from that standard makes us to confess and say, Lord, I've deviated from your standard. Now, one of the reasons why people don't confess is because they have no standard. But the reason you confess because you know you've fallen short. There's a standard, there's a goal, there's an ideal, and you've fallen short and you ask for forgiveness. But if there is nothing, then you can't confess. So which means our whole life in this world should be devoted to learning about God so that you do not misrepresent him. You need to study and learn about God. God is not just a happy feeling of jumping and singing, jumping and getting sweat and then go drink petrol and fuel and go eat grass. That's not how it is. It has to do with the whole being. The thinking is also there. And I know it's quite a challenge for some of our worshipers. They say, but Pastor, you make us think. What am I supposed to do? You are creating the image of God. You make us think. We don't want to think. What do you want to do? Dear children, therefore, be imitators of God as dear children and walk in love as Christ also has loved us and given himself for us, an offering and a sacrifice. And if you link this to what we said in the morning, during the day, if we start falling in love with that development, that developmental framework, that progression, that goal, that trajectory, which means we are destined for heaven. There's no way we can stay here, because here everything goes south. But once you look up, the standard is high. Even when we are in heaven, I know for a fact we'll continue developing. We'll continue learning. And those of us who think Christ comes so that I can stop learning, you're going to be surprised, because even in heaven, there's going to be serious learning. And those who don't want to learn will have to organize some classes in heaven for them, because you've got to learn. There's no other way. You're worshiping a God who is this God, who is not only emotions, but there's will. I know, humanly speaking, there is also strength. There is also mind. You worship God through all those facets. May God bless you as you start this journey, as you begin this journey, as you continue on this journey. And remember, you have a goal in front of you. There are people who are watching you. There are people who are looking at you, and they want to know the God you are serving. They're watching you. See that God. They're watching you. They're watching you. And if you blunder and do all kinds of things, then they say, he's doing exactly like the God is worshiping. I will have no business with that God. Which means you have then misrepresented God in the way you do things. We want to encourage those of us who are yet to make a decision to follow Christ. God bless you. Let's pray together. Our kind and loving Father, we bring our meeting to a close now. We want to thank you for the day. It has been a long day since 7:30 this morning. Prayers have been ascending, Lord. Blessings have been coming down on this place. This has become a Jerusalem for us. Wish we could just stay here until you come and fetch us, but there's so much work to be done, even outside of the parameters of this environment. But we want to thank you, Lord, for the atmosphere, for the love that we feel in this place. The holy angels are walking in this camp up and down. We can feel it. It's just so different. Thank you, Lord. It's such so much joy. And it is our prayer, Lord, that even through interaction, let alone preaching and seminars, just interacting with our fellow brothers for the whole week, the whole day, would make a big difference in our lives and nudge us and push us in the right direction. And those of us who need to make and commit themselves, dear God, continue to speak to them so that they may be able to give their lives and be able to walk with you and enjoy the blessing of basking in your presence. And now, may the grace of our Lord Jesus, the love of fellowship of the Holy Spirit be us now. Amen. Thank you. God bless you.